Saltzman.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Good morning. Let's start with communications items, please. Number 1184.
Request of Lisa Herlinger to address council regarding her small business Ruby Jewel Ice Cream.
Markjhofheinsjr with UCARE here at Portland City Council meeting.
Welcome, please. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, you're welcome. Hi.
Just give us your name. You got 3 minutes.
My name is Lisa Herlinger, and I started Ruby Jewel Ice Cream in 2005. We started.
Current day is
I started
Wednesday,
selling
December
ice cream
18th,
sandwiches at the Portland
9:34
Farmers Market. Soon realized that there was a demand for ice cream sandwiches and a need in the grocery stores for an all-natural ice cream product. So I obsessively looked around, and I really didn't see anything that was quite like it, that was all natural using local ingredients. So I worked I entered a contest at the Food Innovation Center, which is down in Northwest Portland, and it was called the America's Food Fight. And they said, if your product has commercialization potential, come and enter this contest. So I ended up winning, which allowed me a whole year of time to work on the product and take it from making 100 cookies to thousands of cookies, and really helped me to market the product and get it out there. So I luckily got that jump start to the business, and that was in 2005. We grew the business very organically through credit card debt and a few small business loans to have distribution all along the West Coast. We are in mostly like Whole Foods and higher end natural food stores. And in 2010, we opened our first retail scoop shop in North Mississippi. So that was a huge success right away, which enabled us to open our second scoop shop down here on Southwest 12th Avenue. So we've got a couple businesses going. We have a distribution side of the business, and we have 2 retail scoop shops, all under the Ruby Jewel name. And are at that stage right now of really, we maxed out our production capacity in our own kitchen that we have in North Portland, where we make all the ice cream. So we're now working on, what the next steps are to grow the business, because we're really truly gonna be the ice cream brand that's from Portland that goes, nationwide. So I'm really now at that stage of working to, raise some more money, get some more help from people, because it's been really me and my sister that have been growing the business for the past 8 years.
Can we ask a couple quick questions?
Yes.
First of all, how many people do you employ?
Yeah, so it's seasonal. So in the height of the season, which is the summertime here in Portland, just about 50.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you said that you're all natural, locally sourced. So
Yeah.
do you get your dairy products from?
Junction City, Oregon, and from Lockney. Lockney Dairy we've been working with them for about 7 years now.
And what's your most popular product?
At our scoop shops is a caramel ice cream with salted chocolate on top.
So that's the diet one.
Yes.
That's the diet, all low calorie.
That's the low calorie
Yeah.
one.
We won't go sugar free, or I really truly believe if you're gonna make ice cream, we make a high butter fat, really good ice cream. So yeah, and then ice cream sandwich wise is probably our fresh mint with dark chocolate cookies is our top seller. Yeah.
Charlotte, I have to say that based on personal experience, I can attest that fresh mint with dark chocolate cookie is dangerously addictive. And according to my doctor, that product alone has increased my risk of heart attack by 85%. I think that your whole business should be regulated as a producer of controlled substances.
Yeah, no, all in moderation. But if you're gonna eat that way, you might as well eat something that
I think Ruby Jewel is a great name. How did it kind of?
Oh, the name is it's named after a yurt in Colorado. I used to live in Steamboat Springs, and I went on a ski trip, and it's the name of a yurt, Ruby Jewel, right by Jewel Lake, and literally had no connection with ice cream at the time. I just love the name, and that's a big
There's
part.
95% of our small businesses employ 50 or fewer employees. She's right at that sweet spot.
Yeah, right.
Sort of the heart of our local economy. It's great to have these success stories.
Yeah, no, another question I have, and that is from your experience, it sounds like one thing that worked was the business incubator function that the Food Innovation Center played. One thing that maybe didn't work initially was access to credit, since you were using credit cards and
Yeah.
other by hook and by crook stuff. So is that a fair characterization that access to credit was maybe a tougher hurdle?
It was hard. I had a loan through the Oregon Economic Development Commission, OECD, and I had a loan through the Portland Business Development Fund. I had some help through the Food Innovation Center, a little bit of pull from people there that helped me a little bit more. I also got a loan from Whole Foods, and we're working on our second loan to launch our pipeline. Whole Foods has been a great resource for small businesses in the food world, at least. It's tough to get, significant numbers, but I think it's possible. It's just doing some research.
So I hope you're working with PDC now in your expansion plans.
Well, I haven't been working with them yet, but
We'll make sure to send them your way.
okay, sounds
I
good.
have one more question, and that is, do you provide sick time to your employees?
We, well, now we're gonna, we have some alternative benefits that we try to offer, but I'm glad we're doing this, but I also, there's this risk of having it taken advantage of by the employees, that definitely can happen.
As you know, we're going to be implementing it
Yes,
January 1st, so I
yes,
just wanted to
yeah.
offer to you and others
Yeah.
in Stoners if you need assistance in understanding things or.
Yeah, no, I think we're pretty good. Yeah, we're on very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you. All right. Next one, please.
Item 1185, request of Pia Welch to address council regarding West Halen Island. She informed us she's not able to make it.
Oh, okay. I think she sent us some material, but maybe someone else did. Sorry. 1186.
Request of Tom DeShane to address council regarding West Hayden Island.
Morning.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak before you. I know a couple of you. You should have an aerial photo in front. My objective here today is to speak to you on behalf of in support of the Port of Portland's plan to develop approximately 300 of the 800-acre West Hayden Island. I'll also give you a sort of written testimony. Basically, I wanted to cover about 3 points. Number one, emphasize the shortage of industrial land. Number two, to identify some of the different uses regarding industrial warehousing, et cetera. And number three, try to fit that into a balance. By way of introduction, I'm an industrial real estate broker with Moore Space & Simpson. I've been doing this for about 35 years, and a member of the Portland Freight Committee, and most recently a member of the Industrial Lands Watershed Health and Pay group. So I feel like I've been involved in that and been trying to make a living leasing and selling industrial properties as well. Regarding the industrial lands we're on, as you probably well know, it's been now confirmed that there's a shortage, relatively speaking, of industrial land, not only in the city of Portland, but throughout the metropolitan area. And I think that this is one situation where that could greatly benefit that need as well as shortage. We could talk about brownfields, a lot of other things, but that's the one point I'd like to make, kind of confirm. The second point is the uses of industrial land. And as you probably well know, throughout the meetings that I've been involved in and as a practitioner, having industrial lands available is one thing, making them economically work is another, but the use is so critical. A warehousing distribution center that are low job intense per acre, manufacturing, the Intels, the Gundersons, et cetera, are very high intense as far as number of jobs per acre. But to make the industrial system work, we need that combination of rail served, of marine served, of road service to accommodate not only warehousing and or manufacturing, but those bulk distribution type entities that make our whole economy work. So I wanted to make that point that the uses are very significant, how those are utilized. Third thing that I did want to talk about is the balance of available land and those uses. And when it comes to like a West Hayden Island, I think that it's very important that we as a community are aware of what that asset means. I know there's been a lot of talk about environmental issues. There's 500 acres of open green space, which I think is a pretty good balance. But one of the things I wanted to for sure make you aware of is as you look at this aerial photo of the approximate 300 acres, there's only about less than half of that would be affected by open green space. Now, I'm not a geologist, but common sense tells me that I think it isn't like we're taking 300 acres of pristine open space and converting it to heavy industrial. My point is that we're only taking about half of that.
You used your time, so wrap up, and then
Oh, I'm
I've got
sorry.
a question for you, so.
That's overall sorry about that.
No, that's fine, that's fine. So the question I have is you're in this business of trying to accommodate industrial users on different kinds of land. Where's the shortage right now? What kind of space? I mean, we have, for example, about 600 acres of brownfield property right along the Willamette River that, but for the cleanup, would be available. That's another challenge we face as a city. What's the kind of space that you're seeing great demand for that we have a hard time meeting?
I would, roughly speaking, not only just Portland, but the metropolitan area, basically 3 to 10 to 12 to 15 acres. Ideal, or overall, probably around 3 to 12 to 15 acres. That shortage, we've got a few big parcels, and you've seen probably the NAIOP report, et cetera. I'll tell you, when you're working with somebody that says, hey, I need to build a building, 40, 50, 60,000 square feet, that takes about 3 to 5 acres. And to find a property that's available, number one, that's realistically priced, that can be developed, that I think is the heart of our users in the Portland marketplace, and that's where I think the big shortage is.
So the smaller parcels, not necessarily rail served, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, those are on occasion, but I mean that's the real part of what I think we're missing.
Don't we have some available dirt in Airport Way, for example, that meets those specifications?
Some, not much. I can count on one hand the available parcels that are in that size range, that are zoned light industrial. No kidding, you would think, you drive along there and go, wait a minute, I see this green patch right here, it looks like it's 10, 15 acres. But when you drill down to available properties that are on the market that aren't being held by a user to develop later on, or are in the development stages, not many. And relatively speaking, I would say at best, there's probably about 3 or 4 sites that are 5 acres and up, and I can only think of about 1 or 2 that are 5 acres or less. And that's just Airport Way. You get to the brownfield areas, it's even less.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate having the
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you, no, it's helpful, appreciate it. Thanks very much, thanks for coming in. Okay, next one's 1187.
Request of Mike Roach of Paloma Clothing to address council regarding challenges of dealing with competition from the internet.
Morning, Mr. Roach.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. And I want to just start out with a thank you to the council for your support, your proclamation and dedication and support of Small Business Saturday back right after Thanksgiving. Those kinds of and your support for the Little Boxes program and our Golden Ticket program in Multnomah and Hillsdale. That kind of support goes a long way and is really heard by small business owners out there who can sometimes feel pretty lonely and like they're not being listened to. That makes a big, big difference. Of course, we hope that the visibility that we had over that weekend, we hope it continues and lasts for the entire holiday season. That'll remain to be seen, but it's a great time to highlight small businesses, and we really appreciate the fact that you did that. Our Golden Ticket program that we've done for the last 4 years with Multnomah and Hillsdale business districts working together is growing and getting stronger. And we're pleased to see that Beaumont District Association picked it up for the first time this year. Some quick facts about Paloma Clothing. We've been in business since 1975. That's 38 and a half years. I wasn't in diapers when I started the business, but I was 25 and I turned 63 about 2 weeks ago. I started with my mom, Phyllis Roach, in 1975. have managed it and owned it with my wife, Kim Osgood, since 1986. 1,500 square feet, Hillsdale Business District. I'm pleased to count all of you as, or your family members as customers in our store. I really appreciate that as well. We have 15 employees. We're really proud to be able to offer the following benefits to them. We pay 85% of their health insurance. We set aside 10% of their wages into a retirement plan. We provide them with vacation pay and earned sick pay. I point out we can only do those things because we have great customers. We can't do it just out of the goodness of our heart. You have to have customers and sales and profits that support the ability to provide those benefits. I'll get to my point real quick here. Brick and mortar stores do a lot more than sell stuff. We give, for a lot of teenagers, it's the place they get their very first job. And indeed, my wife, Kim, has called Paloma Clothing a finishing school for young adults. Because we've taken some young people we saw potential in, but are kind of rough around the edges, and they've been with us a long time, and they really learn how to conduct themselves in a really adult way, and they learn sales skills. They're around positive adult role models. It makes a big difference in how they are able to develop as individuals. We donate to school auctions. We're a $500 sponsor for the Reiki Elementary School auction. We're proud to say that. I wanted to point out that we also donate to multiple school auctions, including alcohol-free graduation parties. So local businesses do a lot. We also donate, locally owned businesses donate at twice the rate to local nonprofits as big box and internet companies do. Because literally you can walk in our door and ask for a donation and probably talk to the decision maker that same day. The door is always open.
I need you to wrap up soon.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to get to my point here. Primary point is we really appreciate the fact that you highlight the importance of locally owned businesses versus big box businesses, but we are facing really incredible competition from the internet now, and to the degree that you can remind the public, Portlanders out there, that 67 cents of their dollar stays in the local economy when they spend at a locally owned business, but 0 stays behind when they buy over the internet. That's an important piece of education that I don't think Portlanders fully realize, and if you can help us lead the charge on that education piece, we would very much appreciate it. Otherwise, we're going to have nothing but payday loan shops and coffee shops in our business districts with no stores there actually selling products. So again, thank you for all your support of small businesses. It's a big deal.
Thank you, Mike. And one thing I'd like to point out is that even purchases that sort of instinctively we think you make through international internet companies, you can sometimes make through local businesses. For instance, in our neighborhood, if you're ordering books that you can't find in the bookshelves anywhere, you could go to Amazon or you could walk down to Annie Bloom's in Multnomah Village and ask them to order the book for you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mike, just 2 things. My wife Patricia, when she was pregnant with our son Chapin, bought all of her clothing at Paloma because she liked the looser fitting clothing during her pregnancy. So she's a big fan. And the second thing is, how did you do? How were your sales on Small Business Saturday?
We were up, on Small Business Saturday, we were up 30% on that day. And on the Sunday that followed, I think just from the inertia of the Small Business Saturday, we're actually up 40%. So those were some big increases we saw. Those haven't continued like that since then, but it sets a good tone for the holiday season, and we're cautiously optimistic that we're going to have, all small businesses are going to have a really good season. But you guys, seriously, the council made a real difference in what Portlanders did over those 3 days because of the visibility that you, through working with Heather Hale at Venture Portland and the media, brought to the issue of shopping local. So keep up the good work.
No, it's interesting how if we're all reinforcing that message, apparently it's getting through.
Right, that's the encouraging. It's very encouraging that there's a certain chunk of the public that's actually paying attention.
Yeah,
that's always encouraging.
And it's pretty congruent with Portlanders' values about localism. We heard that earlier today about food. Coincidentally, I met earlier this week with a technology business that's planning to move to Portland and bring a bunch of new jobs, which is great. But they said that our tendency towards localism and how we shop is one of the factors that caused them to think it would be a good fit for their company.
Wow.
So it seems like it's not only the people that are already here, but some of the folks that are considering coming here are attracted by that set of values that you're expressing through the way you operate your business and the little boxes campaign and all the rest of it.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, Mayor. That's a good sign if we can use that as one of the things that attracts larger businesses that, of course, employ more people individually than our small businesses. That's great, because then you get the virtuous circle going where all those, we're locally owned businesses. Of course, we buy all our business services, business support services from other locally owned businesses. That's how you hit the 67 cents. We use a local accountant, local printer, local media. They in turn use other locally owned businesses, and that's how you keep, once that money goes across the counter and into a locally owned business, it just keeps circulating in the locally owned sector because of the way our businesses behave versus a large business buys all those support services from corporate headquarters. It's not evil, it's just a different business model that has a different impact. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. All right. And we have one more communication item, 1188.
Request of Mary Ann Schwab to address council regarding People's Water Trust petition initiatives.
Good morning, Marion.
It's hard to talk fast. Hang on, here we go. For the record, my name is Mary Ann Schwab. I'm a community advocate living in the inner southeast neighborhood, Sunnyside, 44 years and counting. And I'd like to start out with discussing things going on with the League of Women Voters. Then I'll go on to my own private comments. As a member of the League of Women Voters, I would like to quote from their Think Before You Ink brochure written by the League of Oregon. This brochure reminds us to think before we sign anything, especially before we sign off on an initiative when we have not had the opportunity to read it. Your signature is valuable. Here are the reasons why citizens should be informed. Consider all 6 questions in this brochure. Number 1, is it complex? Some decisions can be simply yes or no votes. Complex issues may need a thorough legislative examination. Number 2, is it confusing? Some initiatives aren't well written. They may have conflicts requiring court interpretation or resolution. Number 3, does it belong in our Constitution? Initiatives can be local, statutory, or constitutional. Should this become fundamental, constitutional law, protected from change? Further correction by constitutional amendment can be cumbersome and costly, requiring another vote of the people. Number 4, how will it be funded? This is it an unfunded mandate? Would it force our legislature to pull funds from other essential programs? Consider how this would limit government budget flexibility. Initiatives should create their own revenue sources, not earmark, restrict, or obligate specific percentage from the general fund. Number 5, who is behind it? Chief petitioners must file campaign finance transactions under the initiatives petition committee, which must be opened by the elections division before the filing officer approves a petition circulation. You can find out who the other real supporters and opponents are after the petitions are certified as ballot measures and assigned numbers. Chief petitioners do not need to be citizens or even Oregon residents. That is huge. Get contribution and expense reports from the Oregon Elections Division, and we have the information on the brochure how to do that. Number 6, before signing, ask for ID. Paid, not volunteer signature gatherers are now required to carry badges, ID, and photos issued by the Secretary of State. They aren't required to wear or show the ID unless you ask as a Secretary of State, a BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industry, or the Attorney General. But refusal should lead you to refuse to sign. If a case of fraud arises, you have information that could help authorities. Again, think before you ink. Understand your signature is valuable, more valuable than your vote. Considering the fewer signatures are required to approve petitions before ballot measures, only sign initiative petition if you believe should become law. Again, think before you ink. and I'm hearing the bell, so I'd like to add one more little thing, please. Understand the rest of my comments are mine and mine alone, no way representing the League of Women Voters. I'm asking each of you, as well as the viewers watching City Council this morning, to take time to read 2 points of view on the PUD for Portland, published in the Southeast Examiner, December 2013. Time for a Public Water District by Floyd Jones and Kent Crawford, and Why We Oppose the Portland Water District by Bob Salinger. Personally, I feel Portland's Water Bureau may be at risk when unknowingly citizens sign off on the Public Water District Initiative based on 2 or 3 misleading sentences. Big print giveth, small print taketh away. Prior to signing, my guess few, if any people, with the exception of the League of Women Voters, have actually read the 26 pages detailing how the proposed ballot measure will change parts of the city charter. Or have people taken time to Google those enforcing it, albeit, if approved, misinformed voters won't be surprised when the region's largest industrial water users and polluters would actually pay less than residential households and small businesses. Again, think before you ink. Now, there's a couple things here. League of Women Voters also have ongoing education groups, and I want you to go back, and this is to our Commissioner Steve Novak, who I've heard again and again talk about the proposal. We're in the earthquake zone time period, and he keeps talking about emergency preparedness. Well, yes, I support having the fire trucks and emergency equipment on the west side. More important, after listening to the communication format, freedoms, limitations, responsibility, even by some of your city employees, the reason we're having trouble with floods and the shortage of electricity, they're copper. Copper doesn't like water. What's in Portland? Water. We need to put the highest priority on fiber optics within our systems, because if you're having a heart attack or you're having whatever and you don't have that means, that person's in trouble. Number one, it's a public health safety. Number two, we have police, fire, and 911 dispatchers everywhere. We need fiber optics, and we've got to put that higher on the list. And remember, it is jobs. There are highly skilled electricians out there willing to help us with it, and there's people making the fiber optics. So as you talk jobs, please put our communication higher on the list. Anyone wanting any more information, the league is got their open, all the information is available, including a water qualities test recently in April. 380 miles of Oregon coast and near shore has been really studied by the league. And guess what the biggest chemical in our Pacific is? And China's not buying our oysters. We hit the nail on the head last April. It's caffeine, because there's no money with DEQ to go out and inspect the septic tanks along the coast. I won't go there.
Marianne,
So
thank
that's
you.
it.
This is great. There's an old saying here in Portland about good citizens being bridges in the city, and I think you and the League of Women Voters are personifying that. Thank you for all the
And you have
volunteer
a
time.
stellar one sitting right to your right.
Yes, I
And
do.
it's because of her I joined. A couple of little nitpicky things here.
Okay,
I was asked, Mount Tabor wrote a letter to you guys on the 1st of July.
Okay.
We're still waiting confirmation. Thank you, Commissioner Novak and Commissioner Fritz, for responding, telling us to contact you and to contact Commissioner Fish. Well, since July 1, 2013, we're still waiting. I'm also waiting confirmation on my own email.
Waiting for what?
Since the letter was responded to, who's waiting for what?
The people that signed it, it's, if you look on the second page,
So we've not only responded to it, we've met specifically with Mr. Nyland, the author, and in my office to go over the issue. So I think we've done that.
you covered it? Okay, I was just given this information that, I was given this information 2 days ago, so, and I didn't call your
I met
office.
with him within 2 months of the assignment. We had a very robust discussion.
And I want water back in that tank. Mount Tabor's gotta have the water, we've gotta protect that investment. I don't care what it costs, I want those security cameras back on. I want those valves corrected, I want those pumps maintained. It's a good backup. It's not broke, don't damage it by not having water in it. And Dick, you and I will sit in the rack when we fill it.
Yeah, so
I can't go swim in that very long, but you and I will sit in the rack
Show up for that.
as we fill it.
I've made this promise. I was approached by Peter, I was approached by Steve Wax, I was approached by Eileen Brady, and I said, I will put water in Reservoir 6 if council concurs, and B, the petitioners do not use it as a new claim in their lawsuit, or as the centerpiece of their campaign against the city, because the criticism that we perceive by even talking about putting water in is it's a non-mission critical use of ratepayer dollars.
That is horse puckies, and
Okay.
I'm part of the
You and I are on the same side, we're on the same side
I
on
don't
this.
want
I'm just
mosquitoes
saying,
in that
I
thing.
don't need another lawsuit, I'm just saying that, you know.
I'll be there.
We think we might do a special emissary to them to negotiate that. So, that opening line, they're gonna fold.
Thank you
Thank
for
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for letting me go through this, this list. And Commissioner Novak, I really, really hope that the people are gonna start listening and we get fiber optics out here. And I'm also concerned about the 311 call center to ensure better handling of after normal hours, non-emergency calls, including calls from victims of domestic violence needing assistance. We lost the best attorney on the planet, and my heart goes out to his family. Thank you.
All of us do. Thank you, Mary Ann. Treasurer, thank you so much. All right, we'll move to the.
And my answer, by the way.
Yes. He's not sure about that either. Thank you, Mary Ann. Okay, we have a consent calendar. I don't believe we've had any requests to take items off of it. Is that right?
Poll 1204.
1204, okay, done. Oh, there it is, I'm sorry, it was right here with a red tag on it. I missed it. Any others? So with the exception of 1204, let's vote on the consent agenda.
Novak?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye, Mayor, point of order. With the council consent to putting 1204 first on the regular agenda, since I see that Mark Jolin's here, and so he doesn't have to stick around to our.
Fine with me, as long as it's okay with us. We have a time certain, but are you here for these people?
Yeah.
He's here for-
But he would also be here for 1204.
Let's do Lowenstein and then that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Go ahead, vote, Nick.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Okay, consent calendar's adopted. Now, we do have a series of time certains, but if the item 1204 is not a lengthy one, I think.
No, I'm sorry, I meant first on the regular,
After the three times.
after the 3 times third.
Oh, okay, all right, I don't have a problem with that. Okay, all right, then let's take item 1189.
Recognize Sandra Goya as the recipient of the 2013 Steve Lowenstein Trust Award.
Fish.
So
Thank
he's
you, Mayor. I'm gonna
got a
invite
lot
Art Alexander and Joe Hertzberg
recognition
and
award
our honoree to come forward and just tee this up very briefly. Mayor and
related
colleagues. This is the
material
5th
to
year that I've had the
our
honor
situation,
of
at least as
presenting
of
to
this morning
council the
so
Steve
far.
Lowenstein Trust Award. As we all know, the award is named for attorney, author, and civil
We'll
rights
be making a
activist Steve
stand. We
Lowenstein.
have Mark from Joint
Steve
here.
was the founding director of
Requesting
Oregon
that
Legal
we
Services,
also have,
Peace Corps volunteer, an advocate for social justice,
we have multiple
and the former
people
chief
here
of staff of Mike
to
Lindbergh.
address the mental health.
I also learned when I
issue,
moved to Oregon
and
that
dealings
Steve's
with
mother
the
was my next door
police.
neighbor in another city.
Um,
Steve wrote that the recipient of the trust award, quote, shall be that person
As you
who
guys will see when we
demonstrated
get
the
up in
greatest
front of them, it'll be
contribution
definitely an
to assisting the
interesting
poor and underprivileged in the city of Portland, Oregon. Past recipients have included Mariah Taylor, Casey Jama, Mark Jolin, and Denny West. This year, the board has selected Sandra Goyette, G-O-Y-O-T, pronounced Goyette, for her tireless work with Golden Harvesters, a nonprofit providing meals and serving low-income families in our community. Here to tell us more about Sandra and her service to our community is Art Alexander and Joe Hertzberg. Welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Hales and Council. First, I'd like to extend greetings from our chair, Michelle Harper, who has been the person doing this for several years. Death in the family prevented her from being here this morning, so she asked me to extend greetings to Council on her behalf. I am very happy to represent the Lowenstein Trust this morning, and I'd like to begin by asking members of the Trust who are here to please stand.
Let's give them
And Chris, and as you mentioned earlier, Mark Jolin, who is a past recipient, is also a member of the Lowenstein Trust. We're very happy to have had him join us. I will go ahead and pass the microphone over to Joe Hertzberg, who will talk a little bit more about Steve's legacy.
Let me just say a few things about Steve, because I think most of you didn't know him, although as Nick points out, I first met him because we were introduced by Steve's mother. You can probably find in Wikipedia if you look up feisty or firecracker. Steve's resume is pretty amazing. He worked in the early days of the war on poverty, worked for the Ford Foundation in Ethiopia and Chile. He founded Oregon Legal Services and the Oregon Law Foundation, and he wrote the definitive book about the history of the Jews of Oregon. He also found somewhere in that 52-year, too short lifetime, 6 years to work in this building as Mike Lindbergh's chief of staff. Mike is also a member of the Loans Trust Board. Those were in the 80s when Bud Clark and Frank Ivensey were mayor, when the council had members like Margaret Strawn, Dick Fogel, Earl Blumenauer. And Steve was trusted and respected, a straight shooter, consensus builder, and a passionate advocate for the disadvantaged. I think the most important part of Steve's legacy right now is that every one of you has people in your bureaus who consider Steve to be a mentor and a role model. There are people all around this city who ask regularly, what would Steve do? And the answer usually is, let's go get dessert. He had just a hopeless sweet tooth, far worse than yours. He drove just an embarrassing lemon of a car that he wouldn't get rid of for 15 years. He had an infectious cackle of a laugh that would fill a room. But those aren't the things that bring us here. The things that bring us here are Steve's passionate commitment to this city and to the disadvantaged of this city. As members of the trust board, we have to ask, what would Steve do every year? And it's a privilege and a serious responsibility.
And in this year's recognition, we are very happy to, in this year's award, we're very happy to recognize Sandra Goyette and for her tremendous work with Golden Harvesters. They provide meals, food, clothing for people who are deeply in need. I had the opportunity to visit their location, and it was bustling. And that was on one of the coldest days we've had recently. It was packed, and the volunteers who work there are doing tremendous work. And we are recognizing Sandra for her decade of commitment to increasing the capacity of Golden Harvesters. They started off in a very small space, and due to her efforts, they've managed to move through 2 other spaces to a space now that's large enough to provide a good measure of service. Still needs some measure of work, but Sandra's going to talk about it. And I will go ahead and turn the microphone over to our awardee for 2013, Sandra.
Thank you. I want to thank the Lowenstein Trust Foundation for this award, and I also want to thank the City Council for this time to be with you, and our members. With me came Jesse Baker, and he is a general contractor who did most of the work on the remodel of our new building that we have just moved into. It was a 6-month, he happened not to have to be working for 6 months. He worked diligently every week and every day till he got it done with the help of our volunteers. If you don't know what Golden Harvesters is, Golden Harvesters is a food pantry run by all volunteers, and we have active members. Our active members are a total of about 140 people, which include over 500 when you put their families together. And then besides helping them, then if we have any extra, we never let anything go to waste. We have other agencies that we go to, and we call, we take things to them. We have several agencies, so nothing will go to waste in our program. As I said, we are all volunteers. I've been a volunteer for Golden Harvesters, which is located in St. John's for between 9 and going on my 10th year. And how I got started in this, after being, recovering from a long illness, I started to volunteer because it was like I couldn't work anymore, but there was something I needed to do, and I got involved much more than I thought I'd ever would be. I'm currently the treasurer, and I write all the grants. This experience has been extremely rewarding for me, and at times tremendously frustrating. The rewards are many, from the simple thank yous that you get from the small little boy that you gave a toy to, or a peach or an apple to his parents that maybe don't have any food for the day, and we will give food. If they come to our door, we will give them food if they don't have money. We get our money, that the only way we rent is by the $20 a month that our families pay to come in and get groceries. And it's a slim picking, and I have to take all that money and we have to pay our bills. And so I always have a long list of things that need to be done. We will be starting our 26th year in the first of the year, and I'm looking forward to this coming year, which is big space. Yeah, it's still kind of in a work in progress. We have no more money, but we continue on. And it's extremely rewarding at times. And one of the most frustrating things I found is when we had outgrown our building and we couldn't find a building that we could afford to live in or rent. Finally, after 2.5 years of looking, we found this wonderful, wonderful man who let us have this building that had been empty for 10 years. And he said, just go in and do whatever. And so he is so gracious, and we are so thankful for it. The thing about Golden Harvesters is I have a want list and a need list, and that need list is long. And with the funds that we're going to receive from Golden Harvest for the Love Foundation, I can get some of those things off that list. One of the first things I know that I will buy, I know in my heart that's what I'll buy, excuse me, is I have $1,000 from a grant that I got, but a new freezer will cost $1,700. And I have to do some money by the end of the month. So now I can buy that freezer and have it delivered within the next week or so that we really desperately need. Little things like that might seem unimportant to people, but to us it is. Yesterday, something really, I went over to Golden Harvesters because I had some things to do. We're only open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And somebody knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and this man handed me an envelope. And I said, thank you. And then about a half an hour later, knocked on the door. Another person handed me an envelope. I said, thank you, and I put it down. And then about a half an hour later, another person knocked on the door and said, can I come in? I want to help you. And so he came in. So we were awarded with money in checks just yesterday that we didn't even ever expect to get. And now with this and this money here, I have so many things that we need. It's going to be so, I'm so thankful that God is always looking at and helping us out. Excuse me. I am very emotional about Golden Harvesters. It has become just part of me, and I really appreciate this award. I really, really do. And thank you. So,
Thank you.
Sandra, if other people are moved by what you just said and want to contribute, how can they do that? Where should they go?
oh, well, if people want to contribute, they can mail us. They can mail, and our address is 8100 North Lombard. We have somebody making a new Facebook page, but if you look at it, it's got the old, one of us got the old address, and we can't get in to change it. And they can stop by. We're open 9 to 1, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And come in and see if anybody, we operate only on volunteers. If anybody wants to come and volunteer, you're always welcome. We always need volunteers.
So officially, on behalf of the board of the Lowenstein Trust, I'm very proud to present the 2013 Lowenstein Trust Award Second, as well as the check to support the program.
He doesn't take a photo with his
Congratulations. Mayor, before we lose the loans and trust friends, we should also put in the record that the check that they just handed to Sandra is $7,500.
Outstanding.
Very meaningful contribution to our organization.
Well done. Thank you so much. Yeah, we take one. Sure, please, Joe. That's great. Hey, Casey. Well done, folks. That's really great work. Okay, now we have some other time certain items.
God bless you, man.
Yeah, but I did want to mention that we might take that one item quickly while Mark is here.
Yeah, it's real quick.
Let's do it. Let's take 1204, please.
1204, amend 3 subrecipient contracts for $1,938,209 for services to further the goals of the Portland Housing Bureau.
Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This really is to acknowledge and once again thank the council for its support for a supplemental appropriation to towards homelessness projects, totaling about 1.7 million. With the formal documents of 1.9 million. That's due to some accounting things. But I'm pleased to bring these forward. The 3 projects that will begin addressing homelessness right now. We approved this in the fall month, and with your approval today, we are putting this money to work right away. As I said, we've worked quickly to take immediate steps on targeted impacts on homelessness with the one-time funds. Today, with approval, we are supporting 3 projects. One is a multi-organizational approach, which will collaborate with public safety partners to identify vulnerable adults in hotspots throughout the city. Another project focuses on adults aged 55 years and older who need help with housing. And the third project focuses on housing for families. The city's $700,000 commitment or investment is being leveraged with $800,000 by Multnomah County and $130,000 from the Oregon Department of Human Services. All of the projects have an emphasis on working with communities of color, and I'm looking forward to the partnerships with culturally specific organizations. All told, these funds will reach over 200 adults and nearly 100 families, starting, as I said, today. So again, I want to thank the council for its support of this important amount of funds. I want to thank our service providers for work that they do day to day in and day out, and our community partners, Multnomah County and Oregon DHS, for their support. So that's basically what we're doing today with your vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. And do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item?
We didn't have a sign-up sheet, but I know someone wanted to speak.
Please come on up. Come on up. Let us speak. Well, it makes me a little tired. I'll let the question. Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Portland Lightning Think Tank. I always commend the mayor and the commissioners for any efforts that you make to reduce homelessness. I'm in total agreement with what you're doing. Where I always have an issue is we do have that 1,500 to 2,500 people currently outside, which I consider the excluded, that aren't included in a lot of these programs, aren't included in housing throughout the city. My belief, housing first, housing for all, nobody excluded. I know that funds sometimes are difficult to come by to get people into housing. We need to continue to focus with the real estate development community on when they do their projects, and I've said this time and time again, possibly a condo development. Each condominium that they sell, we need to have them possibly put in an agreement that 1% of that sale will be funded toward their privately created foundation. And why I say that, I want their foundations funded from their inventory on every sale that happens throughout the life of that condominium. Then what they can do down the line is create a coalition of developers with their foundations and begin to fund these type of projects that will pick up on that excess amount of people, the excluded, that 1,500 to 2,500 people that do not fit into these certain projects throughout the city. It's an area that needs to be looked at. We need more developments created. The developers have the potential to do that by creating their own foundations. And guess what? It costs the developers no money to do this. That 1% is coming off the 7% of a real estate commission is what it is. They have the ability just to request, since they develop the projects, please distribute 1% of that sale into my foundation. When they do that, we will have a revolving revenue stream that will take care of the excluded throughout this city. It will create a tremendous amount of additional money to develop these projects. It doesn't cost them any money. We need to just ask them to do it, and I'm sure a lot of the developers will be willing to look at this and get this done. It will reduce homelessness. It will take care of the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Next, Joe.
Would you like to go?
I'll let you go first.
My name is Joe Walsh, and I represent Individuals for Justice. The other day, I was visiting a guy, the name is Hasty. Hasty spent 2 years outside your building in a protest that had to do with the camping ban. He was taken to the hospital. He had frostbite. He's going to lose all his toes. And in the process of being tested, they found that he had terminal cancer. You know him because you saw him every day. His real name is Joe, which is ironic for me, because we keep asking you to pay attention to the people that are outside your door. What Mr. Lightning had just said to you is very true. You have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 people every night. I saw a camp by Burnside by 84 that I've never seen before. We were going to a meeting, and there's a huge campsite there that I've never seen before. So I don't know all the campsites, and I don't think you do either. I know you did a walk around, Mayor, and I, acknowledge that and encourage you to do some more. We have this problem and you're not facing it. There is nothing in this money that's coming from you or the county that addresses the people outside. This is a very complicated problem, and you cannot take the same organizations and give them money over and over again and say, we're doing something. That's not it. I beg you, Commissioner Salzman, when you spend this money, watch it and try to figure out how much of the money actually gets to the people that you're trying to get to. So if, for instance, if you had $100, how much actually gets to this one person that you're trying to get off the street? Is it $90? Is it $10? Are you eating it up in your bureaucracy? And I suspect you are. When you hire people, you just eat up the money. And that's what we object to. We applaud you guys thinking, trying to do something about this. Even though I go after all of you on some of the issues, I support this one. However, you have to be creative and you have to follow the money. How are you spending it? Thank you.
I have to say, maybe I'm
Give us your name for
excessively, my name is Kathleen Bushman. I may be excessively cynical, but I assume each one of you owes your soul to the downtown business owners. And I see that's why you pursue the sit-by ordinance, turning our sidewalks, the taxpayers' sidewalks, over to the police department. Maybe I am cynical, but I do see that decentralizing the social services is something that is dear to the hearts of the DDA. I'm fully aware of that. And if they would be willing to give free bus passes to the poor and the homeless, that would be great. There wouldn't be such a bad idea, but it isn't, as long as there is no free bus service. And the other factor is, the other issue I'm really upset about is the fact that you need to hear more from the homeless themselves. Your experts don't, even the homeless probably don't have a good idea of what the exact figures of the homeless are. Because there's a lot of homeless. I was homeless at one time. Most people had no clue I'm homeless. I didn't want anybody to. And I certainly didn't go to the social services. That's another story. For anyone over 55, you can feel intimidated going there, and I decided it was a waste of my time. I had art, and I would sell art on the street, and I made money that way. But on the other hand, as I was able to feed myself, and I had a pretty comfortable actually, because I'm a fair artist, I guess, at least enough to survive it. But on the other issue I'm curious about is the fact that you approved this deal that would allow the Portland police to use steroids. Are you all brain dead?
More about that soon, but
And I thought you ran on the issue of making the police more accountable. You were either lying or you've given up, is all I can conclude, and that's why I'm very angry.
anyone else?
Yeah.
Speak. Come on up, Mark.
Hey guys, Mark Hofheinsjr with UCARE. So there's only a few basic things I really wanted to address with this. I agree greatly with a lot of what they were saying, but as well as it seems more like a sponge fund to me. It ended up being a sponge. You got sponged up by the organizations that was using. Because I see a great deal of what happens and where the money goes, et cetera, and it ends up getting sucked up over a long-term period of time by the people that work for the organization instead of going to the people. And that's a huge issue. Second off,
Mark, could you give us an example with Join, since it's the principal?
well, Join, mind you, Join does get people off.
But give us an example where Join is sponging all this money.
Well, okay. If you'd like me to give you, because here's the thing about it, I mostly have great things for Join. Okay, so you can throw Join at me all you want. You're not going to get any really extreme negative things from me. The only thing that Mark and I have actually discussed is, which our issue is, and which I've already addressed with you guys, is that there is not a shelter, a year-round shelter, like that. Which, if you guys were to, like I said many times, follow Salt Lake City's example, afford them the opportunity to get off the streets, and it separates the criminals from the ones who actually want to make a change. And then but that's besides the point. Okay,
But the other thing is we've been addressing the issue about people out on our doorstep for how many years now? But yet you guys keep weaseling your ways around it. And also, I didn't like the fact that there wasn't any homeless people or people that were more educated as far as the experience of homelessness on your group of committee. That was not appreciated. That was not cool. You know, because if you're privileged and you've been in a house, even middle class, you haven't experienced that which we have experienced. Mind you, I'm off the streets now, by my own working through Join, by the way. And so, but the key to the matter is, without having those people there that actually have the experience and deal with the people on a day-to-day basis like myself or these people, you really don't have the full education as to actually what it is. And I don't even have a constant bias because of the fact that I was homeless. No, I've been both sides. I've had 2 BMWs and a 6-bedroom house of my own. So I've been on both ends. So here's the key, is if we can address these issues and actually get people that actually know and can have experienced these things to actually address what could better the situation, it'd be a whole lot more effective and stop avoiding what has been brought to you. Instead of, you know, doing everything else besides that. And if you can do that, then we wouldn't have to be here.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Good morning, council.
Just comment, you don't know our backgrounds, you don't know our experiences, so it might be good to have a conversation about that rather than.
Please. And I would love to have a conversation. It's kind of hard to get a time with any of you. So, okay, I most definitely will, especially you, Amanda Fritz. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Good morning, council. My name is Barry Joe Stull. I've had some experience with Join. As a person with a disability, Join refused to help me. I endured Ms. Erickson reinforcing Mr. Jolin said Join had promised to help me in her presence, and Join refused to help me. But I'm a pretty smart guy. I took Join to federal court this past January. And I did that because where I was camped on the city property for years, a police officer came and said he was going to refer me to Join. I asked him where his office was, and I promised him, and I kept my promise, that I would give him the materials that the email exchanges that I had with Join, the Multnomah County Health Department had on my behalf with Join. Join refused to help me. Now that could be the Join is in the Portland Police Bureau's administrative rules. They're the ones that you all, when you post your lies that you had in the windows of this building, it says shelter is available. You know that's not true. You just had people today tell you that there's 2,500 people sleeping outside tonight. And you're telling us that shelter is available when you post that a camp is going to be swept? So I'm quite upset with this, because what happened with me was I sued Join in federal court. I got appointed on my motion, Mr. Darian Loisel, over here behind us on the 19th floor, working for Schwab, Williamson, and Wyatt. I had a meeting. Mr. Loisel said they wanted to settle. The court wanted us to settle. I had a meeting with Join. Join promised to take me on as a client. My first meeting with Join, my attorney was present when Join said, I qualify for a HUD program financed through Join called Now Home. We had a little bit of trouble finding a landlord because as I endured my years of homelessness, I endured arrest after arrest after arrest by the Portland Police. And if you type my name into a search engine, what you're going to see is a bunch of booking photos for cases I was found not guilty or cases that couldn't even be charged. So I'm quite upset with this. On September 10th, I got my keys through the Now Home program as a person meeting the qualifications of 1, being a person with a disability, and 2, being a person meeting the definition of chronic homeless. Now, I was chronically homeless because my nonprofit affordable housing landlords filed a 30-day no-cause eviction that was against an express statutory prohibition. And I appealed that, and my landlord destroyed $20,000 worth of my property. And you all know about this because I've said it before. And I've been trying to get police commissioner, a police report written against Judge Ed Jones down here at the courthouse for official misconduct because he stole my right to a jury trial. And in 2010, I got a check for $4,775 for the musical instruments. I have a degree in music from Lewis and Clark College. Musical instruments and tools destroyed in October 2006. I got that check in May of 2010 after my appeal was dismissed for want of prosecution owing to a font size. So this is a problem we have here, and this is a continuing problem, and all these things are coming together. We have an agreement regarding the civil rights abuses of the Portland Police Bureau, and I want to know why PCRI, my landlord, today has a fiveplex that's vacant. I contacted your office, Commissioner Saltzman. I have not gotten a response. So today, when I settle down after I leave this hearing, I'm going across to the county to see if PCRI still owns that. We have some explaining to do here in this city. I'm not proud of the way we've been handling it, and I'm especially not proud of the way that you all have been handling me. I am on your side. You should listen to the truths I have to say, and I should not have to take you all to court, as I've done, by the way.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much. Charles, come on.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, once again, Charles Johnson. And I was rather surprised to get to page 6 of the related PDF for this item and find out that there is a citizen participation plan. I see some unsettled faces on the commission, but I think you've had a number of people who are engaged with the homeless service providers, and I believe it was Commissioner Fish asked about specific shortcomings, and many people who are downtown are frustrated by the trek out to join. So I don't know if any of this money is going to help join better engage with downtown. There's not a lot of chances for you to remain well nourished in your join. But I will specifically respond to Mr. Fish's concern about where he thinks that providers are falling short, exclusive of join. Transition Projects is an unsupervised organization. Doreen Binder may be a good-hearted person, but what happens is you allot these monies, you don't supervise them, and the level of service degrades. The Bud Clark Center I've been in Portland for 18 months, and I've watched the level of service decline. So I hope that in this money, you will look at better accountability and relationships between the people receiving services and the people supposedly managing services to maximize that benefit. And I do appreciate your openness that your doors are open and we can come and speak to you individually as well as right here at this table to make sure that good things happen for the people who are most in need. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Anyone else? Okay. Then any further questions? Roll call.
Colvin.
Aye.
Aye. Fritz.
Aye.
Aye. Fish.
Dan, thanks for putting this on the agenda. This is 1.7 to 9 million as a county. This is general fund money. And let's remember that at a time of sequestration and federal cutbacks on what is a national responsibility, this is the housing commissioner and the city of Portland stepping up to fill a void. And I congratulate you for prioritizing the funding. And the organizations you've chosen join Northwest Pilot Project, Multnomah County, are key partners in leveraging scarce public resources and getting great outcomes. And I also think the focus on families, vulnerable adults is appropriate. The fact that 200 people will be served, I think is good news this holiday season. You did not say, nor would anyone say that this is going to end homelessness in our community, but this is another investment in proven long-term cost-effective approaches to ending homelessness. And I congratulate you for bringing this measure forward.
Saltzman.
Well, thank you, colleagues for approving this funding. And I just also wanted to recognize the Portland Housing Bureau, Sally Erickson and Amy True in my office for their good work on this, and just say that the organizations we're funding, Join, Northwest Pilot Project, and Multnomah County are first-class organizations. I have full confidence in their ability to work with individuals on the streets and to help get them off the street. And we will be watching how this money is spent. We will be getting monthly reports from the providers on the results they're achieving, and then we will bring a report to council, I believe in March or April, to give council a snapshot of how this money is being spent and how we're getting the results that we're intending to get. So thanks again for your support. Please vote aye.
Hales?
Do what you can with what you have where you are. That's a good motto for a lot of things, and that's what we're trying to do here. And I appreciate your leadership on this, Mr. Saltzman, and the good work that's been done to put this package together. And I think if you compare and pair this decision today with the honoree, Sandra Gia, that we just heard about from the Lowenstein Trust, everybody in the community has a responsibility to help on this problem, and a lot of people are. And so I think it's great that the city is stepping up. I also think that it's great that there are organizations like hers, that people who care about this issue to make a contribution of time or money and help. So the city is doing what it can with what we have, with good partners. We all need to do more, and we all have an opportunity to do that. And I hope we all exercise that opportunity by volunteering, by giving food, by supporting organizations like these that are here in the room today, and many others that are trying to address the crisis of homelessness in our community. So thank you for good work, and work to be continued. Aye. Thank you all. Okay, let's move to the remaining time certain items, and let's read them together, 1190 and 1191.
1190, ratify a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Portland Police Association relating to the terms and conditions of employment of represented employees in the Portland Police Association bargaining unit. And 1191, authorize agreements between the city, United States, and Portland Police Association related to police interactions with persons experiencing mental illness.
While our team is getting organized here, let me make some opening remarks and set the stage for the presentation that we're going to get on these two items here this morning. First of all, this is complicated, emotional stuff and extremely important. This is the most dire relationship between the city and our citizens, which is how our police officers conduct themselves, and then how do we manage and take care of the officers who work for us in this critical bureau. So it's important stuff, it's important to get it right. We're talking about three interrelated but different items this morning, and a fourth one this afternoon. That is, first, a 4-year collective bargaining agreement with one of our city's largest unions, the Portland Police Association. Secondly, a memorandum of understanding between the city, the U.S. Department of Justice, and the Portland Police Association. Third, a letter of agreement between the city and the Portland Police Association. And then this afternoon, fourth, proposed changes to our code that govern independent police review, which is in the auditor's office, and the police review board, which is in the police bureau. They're legally separate things, but of course they're interconnected. They all address how our police bureau functions, how it works with the community, how we manage them, and how we hold our officers accountable. The difficult issues we'll hear about today include the provisions of the agreement itself, how we move forward on the Department of Justice, the ability to compel testimony from officers through the independent police review function, and much more. We have a lot of work to do on these issues. These are very important milestones. They are milestones. They're not the completion of these important tasks. But I think we are making progress. And I see evidence of that as the commissioner in charge of the Bureau. I hear reports from the field, from our officers, and from our Bureau about how they're conducting themselves. And occasionally, and in fact, last night, hear from citizens that are seeing how our officers are dealing with people experiencing mental illness. I want to read this letter. It's to officers Paolini, Straub, Clunt, and Marshall. I write to compliment each of you on your handling of the situation in my apartment building last night. Sergeant Simpson shared your needs with me this morning. I live across the hall from a young woman whose friend reported that she threatened suicide. I didn't see any part of your interaction with her, but I heard a fair amount of the lengthy conversation and believe you represented the Portland Police Bureau with distinction. You acted with compassion, empathy, and a tremendous amount of patience. I recognize the many difficulties of interacting with people who are experiencing a crisis and was very impressed with your calm and caring approach throughout. This probably wasn't an unusual incident for you, but it certainly was out of the ordinary for me, and I want to acknowledge your courtesy and professionalism. I appreciate getting that letter, and I appreciated the conduct that it recognized. That's the standard that we set as a community. That's what we want to see every time in our interactions between police officers and the community. It's what we all strive for, and it's what these agreements and understandings between the city, the federal government, and our union are setting the standard for and putting in writing. So with that, I want to ask Anna Camwitt, our HR director, and Ellen Osnack from the city attorney's office, to walk us through these documents and tell us their particulars. So good morning and welcome.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. As you stated, I'm Anna Camwitt, Director of the Bureau of Human Resources. I'm here to present to you the ordinance which to ratify a successor collective bargaining agreement with the Portland Police Association. This has been a long road, but the tentative agreement before you meets many of the city's very important goals and interests. It's also a fair agreement, as evidenced by the fact that 77% of the Portland Police Association members ratified this tentative agreement. Before getting into the details of the agreement, I do want to thank Daryl Turner, the PPA president, for his hard work, and when Ellen Osnack finishes her comments, he's going to come up and make some comments as well about the agreement. But his willingness to collaborate with the city while still protecting his members' interests was instrumental in getting us to where we are today. Also want to thank my chief spokesperson, Jarrell Gaddis, for his long hours and diligence in getting the work done, and of course, Mayor Hales and Chief Reese for their support in the efforts throughout this. So what did we accomplish? The PowerPoint does provide an overview, but first and foremost, the contract is part of a broader settlement, a global settlement with the Department of Justice lawsuit regarding practices of the Police Bureau with respect to people with mental illnesses. As the Mayor mentioned, Ellen Osnack will be presenting that agreement, but this contract is an important part of the mediated settlement with the United States Department of Justice. The Portland Police Association agreed to withdraw their agreements in a challenge to the DOJ settlement, and if the tentative agreement is not ratified by City Council, we really will not have a mediated global settlement. So I cannot stress enough the importance of this one piece of the overall settlement. It also meets a key goal that has been expressed by City Council, which is not only to obtain the mediated settlement, but also a negotiated labor agreement with the Portland Police Association. The contract is a 4-year agreement and is essentially a cost-neutral agreement. The increases in the premiums that I'll be addressing will be paid for by a corresponding decrease in the contractual benefit. There is, as you know, a potential of a one-time expense over the contract savings of approximately $1.5 million, which I'll cover. But as noted by the City Budget Office, that is a one-time expense. It's a worst-case scenario here and can be addressed if need be in the spring bump using the compensation set aside. This tentative agreement provides clear language on performance evaluations for police officers and the other ranks represented by the Portland Police Association. Performance evaluations are an incredibly important tool. They provide a feedback loop for officers and their managers. They provide an avenue for discussion of goals and priorities, feedback on what the officer is doing well, areas of improvement, allows a meaningful dialogue between that officer and his or her supervisor over various initiatives, goals that the officer sets, including the work they're doing in their own districts to reduce crime in this city. Again, I can't stress enough what an important management tool this is, and again, can both improve performance and also as an avenue providing very clear direction to officers about the Bureau's and the city's goals and expectations. Performance evaluations do not replace employee discipline. There are two separate tracks. The Bureau has processes in place for dealing with disciplinary issues that can certainly arise out of poor performance and also arise out of acts of misconduct. That system is still in place. It's not supplanted or replaced by a performance evaluation tool. But this tool, again, is incredibly important communication process that overall can improve officer performance and understanding of their goals. The Portland Police Association also agreed to accept 50% of the cost of living increase in the Portland index that the city uses. They did so in clear recognition of the shared sacrifice between labor and the city in what was a very difficult budget year, with the city facing a budgetary shortfall of approximately $25 million. This met a very important council goal as well. The increase would be 0.9%. The Portland Police Association also accepted that the city was unwilling to agree to make that increase retroactive to July 1, the date of the beginning of the new contract, absent agreement prior to that date. We did reach agreement that this COLA increase will go into effect August 29th. And again, this is a very important achievement for the city, as it does signal to our labor partners that we want to work hard on our labor agreements, but we do want to reach agreements as much as we can prior to the end, by the time our agreements actually expire, so we have them in place on July 1st. The contract eliminates a very expensive and unforeseen expense that allowed officers to cash out at their discretion compensatory time earned for working on holidays. This provision has cost the police bureau approximately $1.2 million a year. Effective January 1st, 2014, there will be no cash out unless the bureau agrees to that. The savings generated by this elimination actually pay for the cost of the negotiated premiums. And again, as I mentioned earlier, does make this agreement essentially a cost-neutral one. As noted, there's a possibility of a one-time budget hit if past behavior is not a predictor of future behavior. And by that, I mean over the years, that this comp time provision has been in place, the cash-out provision, 39% of officers have taken advantage of cashing out all of their holiday comp time, where 61% have not done so. If those percentages hold true, the police bureau will not be faced with any additional comps whatsoever. 1.5 is simply the worst case scenario if every single person cashes out all of their holiday comp time. As part of this contract settlement, we also settled 11 grievances, which is very important in terms of labor peace and being able to move forward with important initiatives. One of those grievances was as part of the Bureau's drug testing program, what happens if an officer tests positive for a steroid that's contained in a legal over-the-counter supplement. This is by no means carte blanche for officers to use steroids. If an officer tests positive for a steroid or for a hormone, that officer will be terminated. However, if the officer can show through testing of the supplement, through a city-approved reputable laboratory, that the substance they tested positive for was actually in a legal supplement and was not labeled, that officer doesn't face automatic termination. That does not mean their termination is not a possibility, and it doesn't mean there won't be other disciplinary actions, but it does recognize that what the officer ingested was actually a legal supplement.
So let's just say that again, Anna. So you did pull this to us in conclusion, that no, police officers are not allowed to take steroids if they test positive and can bring in both a sealed container and one that's been opened of what they've been taking that is an over-the-counter supplement. They then pay themselves to have that tested, and if it turns out that that substance does contain steroids without it being labeled such, they must stop taking it, and there may be some discipline but short termination.
That is correct, Commissioner. Under the drug testing program, if it is a positive test for a drug, otherwise that for the steroids, it would get automatic termination outside this one exception. Since the program, we have still, and part of the drug testing program as well, still includes, of course, random testing, which is the best deterrent for drug use, and reasonable suspicion testing. So if there is a question regarding an officer's behavior, that officer can be tested. We've conducted over 1,000 drug tests, over 1,000 steroid tests since the implementation of this program, and have never had a positive test yet for drug use or steroid use. Contract also provides for premium increases to patrol sergeants and for dog handlers. The 5% for the patrol sergeant is in recognition of demonstrable increases in workload, some of which arising out of the implementation of after action reports and some other initiatives implemented by the police bureau. With respect to the 6% hazard premium for the canine handlers, that is in recognition that, like other hazardous assignments, the canine officers and their dogs are exposed to very hazardous and stressful situations. The dogs, I don't know we're getting anything, but perhaps the handlers can be persuaded for an extra ration of food or something. But seriously, this is a hazardous assignment, and the contract recognizes that fact. Finally, the tentative agreement provides for increases to the shift differential for afternoons and evenings. And that is continued efforts to incent senior and experienced officers to those shifts where there really is more crime, more incidents to deal with, and those are the officers we would like to have on those shifts. And otherwise, shift selections by seniority. Finally, there's a 1% increase to the longevity pay at years 15, 20, and 25%. And again, these premiums and increases are being paid for by reallocation of resources with the elimination of the holiday comp fund cash out. I highly recommend council ratification of this contract. Not only does it meet the very important council goals of allowing the city to move forward with the Department of Justice settlement, it also meets council goals to provide certainty in terms of our contract negotiations, and removes what otherwise would be distraction if the very people who are implementing important reforms don't know what their wages, hours, and working conditions will be with going out for a long way with our contract negotiations. So if I'm open for questions on my presentation, as the mayor mentioned, Ellen Osnek will present the memorandum of agreement, and after she's finished, Darrell Turner will also come forward with his comments. Thank you.
I just have two questions, and thank you for the briefing that you made available to all of us on the specifics prior to today's hearing. Could you remind us that if we do not move forward with the agreement that's before us, what would likely happen in the course of negotiations? Particularly, just give us a quick primer on interest arbitration.
Certainly, Commissioner. So if this agreement is not ratified, the parties will be at impasse because we have both the city and PPA worked very hard to reach negotiated settlements. So there would be little utility in going back to the table. We would declare impasse, and with a public safety workforce, like police officers, they are prohibited from striking. So the way that contract impasse is resolved is the matter is presented to an arbitrator. Each side presents their last best offer, and an arbitrator must pick one side's package or the other. The arbitrator cannot pick and choose. The difficulty with those proceedings is time. They take a long time to schedule, the hearings are lengthy. We would not have a result for a minimum of 6 months, likely to take a year. And of course, we lose control over what that contract looks like because it's a third-party arbitrator that makes that decision and in essence imposes a collective agreement on the city.
You mentioned to me that it could add 6 months to a year of time and uncertainty to this process.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is a 2-week hearing at a minimum, and in our prior experience with interest arbitration, by the time we are at impasse, we are a minimum of 6 months before we get a decision, and in all likelihood a year.
And the second thing I just want to clarify is the PPA agreed to shared sacrifice, as have our other labor partners, on the half COLA. So we should acknowledge that, grateful, because it's in effect as effectively a pay cut, not to get a full COLA. If you look at it at one point, there's always a question in these negotiations of whether we make these increases retroactive. What's been our policy and how did you resolve that?
The city's practice has been the cost of living increase we have agreed to. We have always gone back to July 1st, which is the start of the city's fiscal year and also the start of all of our collective bargaining agreements. The issues with that in terms of collective bargaining is there's very little incentive to get to an agreement if the economic pieces of the agreement are always going to be retroactive, and in my opinion, has led to drawn out negotiations where otherwise we could probably reach an agreement sooner. So while the COLA is still retroactive to August 29th, it is certainly a step in the right direction. It sends a very strong message to our labor partners.
Other questions for Anna or her team before we go to Ellen's presentation? Again, we'll take public testimony on both items after the two presentations. Okay, thank you, Anna. Ellen, morning.
Well, Carla is helping to get that set up. Thank you. My name is Ellen Osenak. I'm the Deputy City Attorney in your City Attorney's Office. And I'm here today to go through the item 1191, which contains a memorandum of agreement, which is between the United States, the city, and the Portland Police Association, and then a letter of agreement that is between just the city and the Portland Police Association. I'd like to begin with some thank yous and some acknowledgements. Working on this case has given me the opportunity to work with some extraordinary people who care deeply about policing in Portland, including Anil Karia, the attorney for the Portland Police Association, and the Portland Police Association staff and members, Shauna Kirby and Ashley Albies, who are the attorneys for the AMA Coalition, and of course the members of the AMA Coalition, and the extraordinary attorneys at the U.S. Department of Justice. I particularly want to thank Mayor Hales and his Chief of Staff, Gail Shibley, for their clear-eyed leadership throughout these complex negotiations which they inherited. Each of you on council has stepped in at various times to break log jams and provide needed feedback. Commissioner Saltzman has been part of this process from the very beginning. Commissioner Fish has provided me with invaluable guidance at critical junctures. Commissioner Fritz and her incredible staff person, Dora Perry, have kept the city focused throughout this process and journey. Commissioner Novick and his staff, Brian Hockaday, have jumped in and were incredibly quick studies about these complex negotiations. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of Auditor Yvonne Griffin-Delayed and her director, Constantine Severe. They too have been here from the beginning and have worked incredibly hard and diligently to move this process forward. Likewise, Chief Mike Reese is demonstrating an unwavering commitment to ensuring a principled settlement of these issues. Finally, the city is blessed to have a dedicated and whip-smart bunch of attorneys who work in your city attorney's office, and I'm honored to be able to have worked with them. In particular, Mark Anberg provided labor advice throughout these proceedings, and David Woberl, who has provided decades of dedicated service to the city on police issues, was an invaluable participant throughout these proceedings and made this settlement possible. So I'd like to walk you all through what the settlement is. And I was teased a little bit this morning that I've broken every PowerPoint rule by having a text-only PowerPoint. So it's true, but I will just attempt to go through it quickly. One of the things I thought was important for both you all and particularly for people that are here today on this item was to understand a little bit of the background of how we got to where we are today. And it's been a complex 2-year process that brought us to this moment. In July of 2011, the United States began a 14-month investigation of the city's policing practices. And in September of 2012, the United States concluded that systemic deficiencies in the city's policy, training, and supervisory oversight mechanisms resulted in a pattern or practice of police officers using excessive force against persons who have or are perceived to have mental illness. At that point, the United States told us that they intended to file a lawsuit against the city. So we immediately began intense negotiations with the Department of Justice, and we ultimately reached a settlement agreement that addressed the allegations. In November of 2012, the council unanimously approved that settlement agreement. After council approved the settlement agreement, the next step was to take the agreement to federal court. And I think all of you know, I think it's worth noting that in general, the parties cannot resolve a lawsuit via a settlement agreement without a court's approval. So that's why we needed to take it to the court to see if they would approve the settlement, or if the court would approve the settlement agreement. At that point, two outside parties moved to intervene in court proceedings, the AMA Coalition for Peace and Justice and the Portland Police Association. Both objected to the settlement agreement, but for opposite reasons. The AMA Coalition did not believe the settlement agreement went far enough, and the PPA believes that in some cases it went too far. The court granted enhanced amicus status to the AMA Coalition, and the court granted intervener status to the Portland Police Association. Based on Ninth Circuit case law, the court told the parties that it would not enter the settlement agreement if it contained terms that conflicted with the PPA's labor contract. The city believed that no conflict existed, and the PPA believed that conflicts did exist. Although the AMA Coalition was not granted intervener status, the court recognized that they had a special stake in the litigation. So at that point, the court asked the United States and the city to engage in mediation with all four parties. So the United States, the city, the AMA Coalition, and the PPA all participated in formal negotiations and mediation. And as you might imagine, there were at that point a multitude of views in the room about what would be the best way to proceed. So to further complicate matters at that point, the city was collectively bargaining a successor contract with the Portland Police Association. In addition, the Portland Police Association had filed a grievance alleging that the city could not implement the settlement agreement. So we had the motion to intervene and mediation to deal with. We had collective bargaining on a successor contract, and we also had a grievance to deal with. Throughout mediation, the parties worked very hard, and we were able to negotiate a collaborative agreement with the AMA Coalition, and City Council approved that collaborative agreement in July 2013. Through that collaborative agreement, the AMA Coalition agreed to support the court's approval of the settlement agreement while reserving the right to advocate for further changes. The United States City and PPA were not able to negotiate an agreement through mediation, but we continued to have discussions. Part of the reason we were unable to negotiate an agreement by July was that the biggest issue the court wanted the parties to resolve was whether the DOJ settlement agreement conflicted with the PPA's labor contract. And it was not possible to really resolve that dispute until we had a successor contract in place. So at that point,
Can I just ask something?
Yes.
If you go back one slide. This issue comes up regularly here at council. It comes up with FPD&R, it comes up with our labor contracts, it comes up with the ordinary course. And I think we take for granted that this is an issue that has to be resolved and reconciled and it's competing law. But could you just give a 2-sentence, drill down a little deeper, just briefly on why it is that where there's a duty to bargain, the council can't act, or what happens if the council does act and there's a duty to bargain and what are the legal consequences?
Where there's a duty to bargain, in general, if the council acts unilaterally without engaging in collective bargaining, then that's considered an unfair labor practice, and it would subject both the decision of council and however they implemented their decision to sort of second guessing being overturned, in addition to perhaps having the Employment Relations Board sustain an allegation that we had in fact engaged in unfair labor practice.
I think just by way of context, in some jurisdictions like Wisconsin, the legislature has simply stripped public sector unions of certain rights to bargain. And that's one way of addressing it. In Oregon, we have a state law that mandates that you bargain with your labor partners. And that's the law that we're bound to follow, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. So as a result of the bargaining that occurred between July and November of 2013, the city and the PPA were able to tentatively agree on a successor contract, and that's before you today in item 1190, and the Director Canway just explained. Once the contours, the The collective bargaining and discussing potential settlements with the PPA were occurring simultaneously. But once the contours of the successor contract were in place, the city and the PPA were able to finalize those agreements and resolve the PPA's objections to the DOJ settlement agreement. And just for reference, when I say the DOJ settlement agreement, I'm referring to the settlement agreement that was approved by council in December of 2012. Because this is a global settlement, council must pass items 1190 and 1191 in order for the court to move forward in approving the DOJ settlement agreement. If either item fails to pass, the lawsuit will move away from settlement and toward further briefing and possibly trial, which is what Judge Simon indicated he believed would happen if we failed to settle the PPA's objections. So moving now to the actual substance of
Just, excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but that means that we can't get to the fairness hearing that would be scheduled in February unless we approve both of these items.
That's absolutely correct. Item 1191 contains two agreements, a memorandum of agreement and a letter of agreement. And I just want to go through those briefly, mainly for the benefit of those that are here to testify and also for you all. So the terms of the memorandum of agreement, the heart of the agreement is that the PPA agreed to withdraw its objections to entry of the settlement agreement and to file any necessary court paperwork to make that happen. It also agreed to dismiss the grievance that I referred to earlier that was related to the settlement agreement. And importantly, they waived their bargaining rights to already implemented reforms, some of which I'll talk about, and Chief Reese may also talk about what those already implemented reforms are, as well as future implementation of reforms that they reasonably anticipate will occur. They retain their bargaining rights for implementation of reforms that they could not have foreseen, and they retain some bargaining rights in relation to three specific subjects in the settlement agreement. The first is the interview protocols for officer involved in force events, the IPR interview of officers, and unforeseeable court enforcement of the agreement. I want to note at this point that I have submitted an amended memorandum of agreement that has an updated reference in paragraph 9 to the proposal that you'll hear this afternoon for the changes to the IPR code. You may remember the memorandum of agreement that I submitted had a reference to the code that was introduced on October 23rd, and now I've updated it to indicate that it is they're retaining their rights to the code, that the sections of the code that are being introduced this afternoon.
Those are just changes of reference, not of substance.
That's correct.
Someone, does that toolbar, that icon on the bottom, is it's blocking some of your text?
I know, I can't seem to.
I don't want to make it more.
No, I appreciate that.
Microsoft moment here. Yep. Hey, congratulations.
Hey, thank you. Oh, my goodness. I think there may have been some confusion about what paragraph 9 means. In terms of, does this mean that the city agrees that they're prohibited from enacting changes to these areas? So we wanted to make it clear that the city retains its right to enact any changes to the manner in which officers are interviewed when those changes are not mandatory for bargaining. And if the PPA and city disagree about whether a change is mandatory for bargaining in one of those three areas, we both retain our right to submit that dispute to an appropriate decision maker. The PPA retains its collective bargaining rights for matters that are unrelated to the DOJ settlement agreement. And paragraphs 11 through 9 contain housekeeping matters such as an affirmation of the due process requirement for discipline, the procedure for enforcing the memorandum of agreement, the term of the memorandum of agreement, and other general legal provisions. The letter of agreement clarifies that the discipline guide, which is required by the DOJ settlement agreement, will not supplant the legal requirements of due process and just cause. But otherwise, the city will be implementing and using the discipline guide at their discretion. So,
Ellen,
yes.
just to dwell on that point for a moment. So the PPA has agreed that the implementation of the discipline guide is not the subject of mandatory subject of bargaining.
That's correct. So clearing the path to reform, and what is the benefit of the agreements that are before you today? It's going to allow the city to confidently continue implementation of the settlement agreement without the threat of those actions being second-guessed or overturned in some other legal proceeding. For example, the city has already or is about to implement reforms to its policies, training, and accountability systems. With the settlement, those changes will be free from the uncertainty of legal challenges. And some of the highlights of the settlement agreement include a new use of force, performance, and taser policies, and those will become effective January 1st of next year. Those policies are currently on the city's website, the Police Bureau's website. So if you Google Police Bureau, Portland Police new use of force policies, the link will come up right away for you, and folks can look at those. These policies are incredibly important, and for many were at the heart of the Department of Justice settlement agreement, and they focus on de-escalation and appropriate responses to people who are experiencing mental health crisis. The Bureau implemented a training plan that included scenario-based training incorporating de-escalation tactics such as disengaging, waiting, and calling for appropriate backup units. There are specialized responses to mental health crises that are included in the DOJ settlement agreement, including the fact that all officers will continue to be CIT trained. The Addictions and Behavioral Health Unit will continue to advance their cutting-edge techniques for police interactions with persons experiencing a mental health crisis. And finally, there are important changes to officer accountability, including that supervisors will continue to go to the scene of all use of force and conduct investigations, something that had been the subject of a grievance that will be resolved with this global settlement. And very importantly, the city will have a discipline guide for the first time. There will also be new thresholds in the employee information system for triggering an overall evaluation of an officer's use of force. For all of those things, the PPA has agreed to waive their bargaining rights. So those are important reforms that can move forward. There are clearly important milestones yet to come, and this global settlement does not address every concern that I think council and the community has. But it's a giant step forward toward accomplishing the goals of implementing further police reform and improving police accountability.
Great, Alan, thank you very much.
Question. While you were negotiating this settlement, which by the way, for both of you, thank you very much for all of your good work, there was a different set of, or a different proposal in the independent police review for how officers could be questioned than is on the table this afternoon. If the council approves either this afternoon or after the fairness hearing something similar to what's in the latest proposal, how does that relate to what's in the settlement?
The original agreement, the PPA wanted to retain its bargaining rights as to those changes that the council might make to the manner in which IPR questioned officers. And the language I used in the initial draft was to say substantially similar. And so the code changes that are being presented today, we think resolve the city's, they don't trigger mandatory bargaining. But in speaking with the PPA council, they still wish to retain their bargaining rights to that aspect of the code changes. So we simply agreed that those changes are substantially similar, and so I updated the references in the old code to correspond to the references in the new code. So that's the way it relates. It doesn't change anything substantively. They would have retained their rights to the old or the new code, but we just wanted to make it clear.
Other questions? No? Great.
Daryl Turner.
Yes, so we'll call up Daryl Turner from the PPA, and then I think also the chief after that. So we'll come up together if you like. So thank both of you. Obviously, we may have other questions. Good morning. Good morning.
I'm struggling a little bit with allergies, so I'll do my best.
Anna's relieved that it's not a cold, so.
It's not a cold.
She's moving away from you, right?
It goes away when I'm in warm weather. Mayor Hills, Commissioners, Darrell Turner, President of the Portland Police Association. I'm honored to be here today representing the 900 men and women of the Portland Police Association as the city moves to ratify a new collective bargaining agreement and the US DOJ settlement. This has been a long, complex process. The city and the PPA negotiating teams worked tirelessly in weighing budget issues, policy issues, US DOJ issues, the rights of our members, and the welfare of the citizens we serve. The negotiations were tough but fair. We reached the fair and equitable tentative agreement before you only through collaboration. When I began my tenure as PPA president 3.5 years ago, I advocated that we work collaboratively together with the city and the police bureau as issues arose. Working together towards a voluntary agreement results in a far better result than what we could have come up with after years of contentious litigation. Although this current bargaining process didn't necessarily begin with collaboration, we reached the end result only through collective hard work, dedication, and resolve. I hope that we take the core lesson that we've learned from this process, that collaboration best serves the parties, and apply it as we move forward in addressing other important law enforcement issues that we will face in the days ahead. Although there are many people who work tirelessly to get the parties to this point, I would like to especially thank Anna Kennewick, Ellen Ostak, and Chief Mike Reese. Most of all, I would like to thank the 900 members of the PPA. Their hard work, dedication, and compassion for the community has made Portland one of the safest, most livable, and respected cities in the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Also, I have one little bit more to add. I do want to clarify an issue regarding the discipline guide. We agreed to use it as an advisory tool, such as the PRB. But the PPA did not agree that the discipline guide is not a mandatory subject of bargaining. Nor did we agree that it is a mandatory for bargaining. We simply agreed on how to use the guide.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right, Chief.
Sounds like you kept your options open.
Yes.
Mayor and Commissioners, I appreciate the opportunity to address Council this morning. The collective bargaining agreement and the MOA are a positive step forward for the community and the Portland Police Bureau. It is morally and ethically appropriate for us to own these reform measures and to begin the work immediately. And I'm very proud of the work that we've already done. We didn't wait until today to begin the processes and implementation of the reform measures. We used the settlement agreement that was drafted and approved by Council last year as a roadmap, and we will continue to use it as a roadmap to move forward. We have done good work already, and we anticipate doing much more. It is challenging work. There are too many people in mental health crisis in Oregon, and certainly not enough resources to assist them. We know as a Portland Police Bureau that we can always do better, and we are committed to continuous improvement, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to show Council that improvement. In regards to the collective bargaining agreement, it helps to provide certainty as we move forward with the DOJ settlement agreement, and that we're not going to have labor strife over issues that are important for our community and important to the Bureau. It has important changes that are fiscally responsible and provide improved accountability. And those include some of the things that Anna mentioned earlier, such as the employee evaluations. And I want to also close by thanking Ellen Osnak, Joelle Gaddis, and Anna Kennewick for their hard work and leadership on this, and I urge your support. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Questions? Daryl?
I do have a follow-up question on the issue of the discipline guide. I mean, it seemed to me that having a discipline guide is a critical piece of what we're doing going forward. And it's important to have consistent discipline, and I think that that will be reassuring to the citizens and also to members of the force. So I've heard expressed concern about inconsistent discipline. And also, I would hope that having a consistent discipline guide would ultimately lead to different results in arbitrations and ERB proceedings, where it's my impression that sometimes the city's been on losing end, partly because we've had a record of inconsistency. I'm a little confused, Mr. Turner, by what you just said, compared to what Ellen Osnak just said. It was my understanding that that you had said that you would not argue that implementation of the discipline guide is the subject of mandatory bargaining. I'm wondering, based on what you just said, whether when there's an attempt to implement discipline based on the guide, you will argue that each element of the guide needs to be bargained.
No, because the police chief and the police commissioner have control over discipline. So obviously, we knew that even though it's an advisory guide, that it would be used as a springboard for discipline by the chief and by the police commissioner when they have that right to do that. So we understand that they have the right to use the discipline guide as a tool for discipline.
I might put words in both of their mouths. I think my understanding of this fits both of those perspectives, and that is the discipline guide, if you look at it, is a matrix of choices for the party who gets to exercise discipline, namely the commissioner in charge and the chief. Judgment is still involved. It's not like there's no discretion or no judgment whatsoever involved in the exercise of discipline, but there are parameters around what each type of failure receives in terms of discipline. I think it's extraordinarily clear and useful, while still acknowledging the fact that real people who exercise judgment are still in the loop, and you can't, nor should you, try to have a discipline guide that's so mechanical that no exercise of judgment by the chief or the commissioner in charge would even be possible. That would be crazy and wouldn't work. But I think this is clear enough and definitive enough. If you do this, you will be subject to a range of discipline that looks like that. And I do believe that it will be reassuring to our officers and also pushing them in the right direction. And that it will give the chief the opportunity to look at particular circumstances around a situation, mitigating, aggravating circumstances. That, in this particular case, it was even worse that you did this, or in this particular case, it's a little more understandable that you did this. That range of discretion is appropriate, but also having some clarity for the community, for the officers, for everybody involved, that these are the rules. I think we're as close as human nature allows in the management of discipline with this matrix.
Mayor, can I just put a finer point on that? Because I think Commissioner Novick raises an excellent point. Our understanding based on the testimony, therefore, as a council, is that we have a discipline guide which you and the chief would use. That if the PPA believes that the facts or the law do not support a decision, or that somehow the guide has been applied inconsistently, they would of course have the right, that they have pre-existing right to grieve that and go through the ordinary course and have an arbitrator decide that. But my understanding is that they will not be filing currently an unfair labor practice saying that you and the chief are without legal authority to refer to a discipline guide because it has not been marked. Is that correct?
If the discipline guide is an advisory tool, they can still use it. We understand that the chief and the commissioner will be able to use it.
And so, again, it doesn't impact the right of a member in the union to bring a grievance.
Grieve discipline as we always have had that right.
We have an agreement that says a higher authority can ultimately decide the question, but it would not be accompanied by an unfair labor practice saying you don't have the right to refer to this discipline.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions for the chief or for Hannah?
Chief, I did have a question about the 48-hour rule, which has been the subject of considerable controversy. And it's my understanding that although the agreement with PPA says that we will continue to generally have a 48-hour rule, that you have discretion in some cases to order compelled testimony and investigation before 48 hours is elapsed. And I wonder if you could talk about whether there are some circumstances in which you use that discretion.
I don't know of any circumstances where we've used that recently. I can foresee opportunities where we may. Certainly the PPA has an officer bill of rights that carves out a part of that. One of the rights is that they have 48-hour notice prior to an administrative hearing or where we compel testimony. And in the past, there is some exceptions to that. In the past, we haven't used that. I can see where, for example, there's a timeliness issue. So you may have an investigation underway. You're interviewing one member, and in the course of that interview, information comes out that you want to bring in and compel testimony from another member, you find out that member is perhaps leaving town the next day. So you may employ that 48-hour rule exception to bring that member in to get that testimony so that we're not delaying the course of the investigation. These are often complicated, certainly by criminal matters. So if you have an officer involved shooting or a case that involves criminal culpability, you're going to have the district attorney's office involved in that decision making as well.
Can you express what your response would be to a citizen who said that we shouldn't give people 48 hours to before their testimony is compelled? That sounds like we're just sort of giving them time to get their story straight.
Mm-hmm. Again, these are administrative hearings. They often occur long after an incident has occurred. So, for example, in the case of a citizen complaint where we're doing a thorough and complete investigation, that complaint may be 2 or 3 weeks after the event. So the investigators have to give the employee notice. We have to pull reports. We may want to interview the complainant and other people prior to interviewing the officer.
Other questions?
If I may just add a little bit to that point. As the chief mentioned, best practice when you're conducting an investigation is generally to collect all of the relevant information that you can before you do your interviews of what in this case, in a forced situation, a citizen complaint, the officer would be the respondent, and when you get to that point of doing those questions, it's much more effective, obviously, if the investigator has as much information as he or she possibly can have. And in that respect, those investigations really aren't that much different from the other investigations we conduct in the city. But as the chief mentioned, this is very, very complicated, particularly because of the nature of the police work. And that police officers, part of their job, unfortunately, is to use force when necessary. And there are can be issues, as the chief said, with compelling testimony. If they're with use of force, as they know, there's always a potential issue of criminal culpability. And also the issue of those events are very traumatic. And there are studies that other attorneys can talk about here today that do caution against immediate interviews. But again, the contract language does provide for where a delay would impact the investigation, would jeopardize the investigation. Those interviews can take place prior to 48 hours, or if criminal culpability is not an issue, the interviews can take place prior to 48 hours. So there's not an absolute prohibition of the contract language.
I will say when we have timeliness issues or we have a compelling reason to pull an officer in, the EPA has cooperated in many of these instances. And so we haven't had to force an officer to come in without representation in that type of setting.
There's another issue that I wanted to talk about a bit. It might actually be helpful to have Ellen with relation to the DOJ.
Come on up, Ellen, just bring a chair with you.
This is an issue which I wish I known about and thought about earlier, but the DOJ settlement says at page 42 that the Citizen Review Committee appeals will be resolved within 21 days. And I had a member of the CRC come to me some days ago and say that that's not really a realistic timeline for a group of volunteers, many of whom have full-time jobs, to review the information and get together and render a decision. And Ellen, it's my understanding that that's a point that the city made in discussions with DOJ, and DOJ wasn't very receptive. Is that fair?
I would say that's very fair. It's certainly a concern that has been expressed in numerous forums. Both I know Commissioner Fritz is very aware of this issue. During the course of heated mediation, we talked again about that issue and just were not able to get a compromise with the Department of Justice on that. Having said that, I think their position is also that they actually wanted a much stricter timeline than 180 days. And the 21 days is part of that 180 days. So what we, I think, have gotten them to agree to is that if we are not able to achieve substantial compliance, so for example, if the CRC could not achieve substantial compliance within 21 days, that issue, since it has been raised repeatedly by both advocates and the city, I think is certainly something that in the future, if we were not able to achieve substantial compliance, we put them on notice, and I believe there would be room to negotiate in the future about it.
I hope that's true, but